It's time for Reason.
That's the priorities our government has set. We just talked about the state budget and where the money's going and how much taxes they want to increase on us. Now we're looking at the federal level and looking at a federal budget reform on what we can do to get our budget under control. And instead of worrying about where the money's going and what our tax rate's going to look like and what our spending's going to look like, we're too concerned with giving amnesty to illegal aliens. Notice the priority of the progressives.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, man, welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting, hailing from the center of the country, literally, right here in Wichita, Kansas, off the flagship, the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, broadcasting all across the Mid-America Network and the entire Mid-America region, and, of course, KGPT TV. Welcome aboard. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Tuesday's got to be my favorite day. I really have to say, Tuesdays are my favorite day of the entire week, just for the fact that we've already gotten through the hardest day that is Monday. We're not quite halfway through the week, which means we still have an opportunity to, get things done. We still actually get to be productive and actually get our job done. And that way, if we work ahead and we work really, really hard, then we can be productive at the end of the week, and then we get to actually enjoy. And we get to relax a little bit. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Welcome into it. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, it is open lines to you. I want to hear from you what's on your mind today. You can always shoot me a message all over social media, on the Facebook pages, the Voice of Reason page, KQAM page, on the Twitter at Hoosier Reason, and, of course, the Facebook Live feed we have rolling right now. You can always send me a message there. I'd love to hear from you. Whatever's on your mind. A lot of big news, and we don't want to be distracted from the ridiculous stories like, there's a certain amount of Philadelphia Eagles players that are going to be protesting the trip to the White House to meet President Donald Trump. I don't care. That's the whole reason we didn't watch the NFL. The Super Bowl being the lowest rated in the last 8 years. Gee, I wonder why. We don't need to spend an entire hour show talking about why the NFL ratings were the lowest they've been in 8 years. For the Super Bowl, I wonder why. Because people turned it off. They didn't want to watch it. They didn't want to listen to it. I got emails. I got messages yesterday when we asked if we did watch the Super Bowl and what your thoughts were on it. And nope. We got rid of our NFL paraphernalia. We got rid of our attire. We got rid of our jerseys. We got rid of our stuff. And we're just not going to pay attention nor watch it any longer. That's what I heard from numerous individuals yesterday. And that's about the message that we've gotten from a lot of people. So the fact that the ratings were the lowest they've been in 8 years, so what? Then you hear about the Dow dropping 1,500 points or whatever it was, 1,100 points, 1,500 points, doesn't matter. So what? It was a one-day drop. Now it's beginning to climb again. Oh, look at that. President Trump's bubble finally burst. Yeah, okay. Tell me how Donald Trump had caused a one-day, quote-unquote, bubble to burst before it starts climbing again. This is almost the way I see it. It's almost like a transmission in a car. It's a gear. We've grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. Now we need to pull it back a little bit, and we need to grow again at a little bit faster rate. We're going to grow a little bit better, a little more substantial. This is still the blending and the transition between the Barack Obama economy and the Donald Trump economy. The fact that we're still growing insane amounts of rates when it comes to low unemployment rates, when it comes to new businesses investing money, when it comes to new jobs happening all across the country, this is good news for the country. This is good news. Now, why we saw a blip like that? Well, you know what? We're correcting ourselves. It's going to take a while. There are many different bubbles right now. It's almost like you have a car, right? And you take it to the dealer or you take it to the auto shop. And sometimes after the 100,000 miles, they need to check all the, not just your oil, but they need to check all the fluids. And they need to check the brake fluid and the transmission fluid. And you know that when you replace those, you need to let them bleed for a little bit in order to get rid of the bubbles, right? Because you can't have any air pockets in those. It's got to be a straight stream, and then you're set to go. But if you have an air bubble in there, then you end up damaging the vehicle. That's what's happening with the market right now. We are correcting ourselves. We've gone years and years and years, not just under Barack Obama, but we've gone years and years under Barack Obama, under George W. Bush, under Bill Clinton, under George H.W. Bush. to where we've injected money, we've created the bubbles by printing money, by injecting them into the system, by wanting to borrow money from China, by borrowing money from all over the world. We've wanted to create this scenario to where we've arbitrarily and it's not realistically grown the economy. We've lowered the value of the dollar. We've harmed ourselves by our economic moves, by the quantitative easing. We've artificially tried to hype up our economy. Now that we're growing it the real way, which we haven't done since really Ronald Reagan, now that we've actually begun to do it the proper way, it's trying to correct itself. Yeah, we grew, but then we ran into a bubble. We burst the bubble. It went back down a little bit. Now we're going to grow again. We'll probably hit another bubble soon, and then we'll go back down, and then we'll start increasing again. This is the way the system corrects itself. When you start focusing on the private sector again, and you start getting rid of the government involvement in there, how many different regulations has Donald Trump actually gotten rid of and repealed from Barack Obama? How many different regulatory pieces of legislation that came through the fourth branch of government, the bureaucratic state, has Donald Trump repealed? A lot. So what's going to happen? Now we have the private sector actually taking responsibility of the economy. It's growing the way it needs to. It's going to go down. We grew. We inflated ourselves. It burst a little bit, and now we're going to start climbing again. There's nothing bad here. This is a good sign, in my opinion. Now, I'm not an expert on the markets. I'm not an expert on stock markets. I'm not an expert on whatever, but this is the trend that I see, politically speaking. Because we've had a drastic change in how the economy is actually crafted, how we're actually going about looking at the economy. And this is good news to me. So if anybody comes to you on the street and says, hey, you know what? Yeah, look at that. Donald Trump, actually, he's destroying the economy. Yeah, that was the inflated numbers. Now look at this. It's gone back down. And it's actually back to the place he was when he started, when this started climbing. Look at that. He's really not all that special, is he? Just wait. Just wait. We're fixing ourselves. We're bleeding the system the way we need to get rid of all the air bubbles in it, so that way we can actually work appropriately. We can actually run smoothly again. It's going to be the fine-tuned engine once we're done with this, baby. It's going to be the fine-tuned engine to where we have the private sector running beautifully. We have business growing. We have employees getting hired. We have salary hikes going up. We have all across the board, no matter what minority group you may be in, we're going to be working. We're going to be contributing. We're going to be paying into the system. We're going to be buying things. We're going to be investing in things, and the economy is going to be doing well. That's what we need to see. And right now, we're just bleeding the system, getting the air pockets out. Because Barack Obama can only have created so many air bubbles in the system, and we're going to find them and we're going to pop those suckers. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, Keith Esau, he's a state representative for the state of Kansas. He's going to join us. We talked to him yesterday talking about not only the legislative session, but also his run for the Secretary of State position. Now, as far as I'm aware, there are 3 Republicans running for the Secretary of State and 1 Democrat right now. And the Democrat joined relatively recently, but there are 3 Republicans running for the Secretary of State to fill Chris Kobach's seat as he is running for the governor's position. So we talked with Keith Esau yesterday, one of the candidates that is running for the Secretary of State, also current state representative. So we'll talk briefly about some of the legislative issues as well. If you missed it yesterday, because we didn't get to it really till the second hour, so everybody on the western part of the state that may not have gotten to hear this, we talked about a lot of the gun bills that were happening in the state of Kansas. There were 2 of them. One of them was not really that big of a deal, and the second one was the state reciprocity, along with the push to try and repeal carry on campus. That bill did get shot down 69 to 53, I believe it was 69 to 53, and that bill did not go any further. Now the Senate's going to try the same thing and see if they can find the right amendments to be able to include into the bill. But if you're curious to see what Republicans supported the repeal of carry on campus, what Republicans actually wanted to get rid of your Second Amendment rights, wanted to actually get rid of constitutional carry in the state, and actually try to implement background checks and permit requirements, then you need to look on the Facebook page. We shared that on the Voice of Reason page, along with the KQAM page on Facebook, and we listed all 17 out of the 53 that voted for the repeal of carry on campus, that voted for the repeal of the Second Amendment, really. Out of the 53, there were 17 Republicans. I posted them by name, and called them out individually by name on the Facebook page so that way you can see who they are. Because going into a midterm election, as I mentioned, I'm a little shocked. I'm a little surprised of the fact that they would actually try this in an election year as a Republican. Now, the Democrats, they know what they're doing. They have their agenda to repeal gun rights. They have their agenda to repeal whatever. They know what they're doing. Republicans, though, the fact that they're going to vote for anti-gun legislation in a year of a midterm election is kind of a surprising thing. So remember their names. If it doesn't matter to you, then it doesn't matter to you. But for those of us that do actually care about our gun rights and our Second Amendment rights, that is a bothersome, worrisome kind of thing. So if it bothers you, then the 17 names from the House of Representatives in the state of Kansas that voted to repeal carry on campus, that voted to repeal the Second Amendment in the state in our constitutional carry, their names are called out on Facebook. Go there, look at the entire voting list, along with the names that I posted on there for the 17 Republicans that voted against or voted for that legislation to go against the Second Amendment. So that's on there if you want to look at it. We did talk to a couple different legislators yesterday about the bill, and it was kind of interesting to see how it's been crafted. It started off nicely. It really did. Started off with the reciprocity by itself, and then they just attached a whole bunch of stuff onto it to where it didn't really actually be any benefit to us. If they stick to strictly state reciprocity, it would be a really good bill. But it's not. So let's try it again, shall we? Let's take a break here. When we come back, lots more to get to today. News happening all across the state. We'll touch on your thoughts and calls as well. This is The Voice of Reason. Happy Tuesday morning.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
Good morning to you. Welcome back into The Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network along with KGPT TV, channel 2610. By the way, if you are watching the TV, or maybe you're not right now, you can always check it out again in the evenings as it is recorded and played back from 6 to 9 at night tonight. Every night, 6 to 9 in the evening. That way you can wake up in the morning, have your breakfast with The Voice of Reason. You can have your dinner in the evening with The Voice of Reason. That's what we're here for you, to give you that information. Welcome into it. Scott on email, not sure, but I'm sure pretty guessing that the people saying that President Trump's stock market bubble popped are the very same ones that claim that Barack Obama is the one that created the record highs. Look, and I don't care for it, and it's a good point. I don't really care for the blips here and there because guess what? It's the stock market. It's going to happen. What I care about is the long trends. The reason that we gave Trump so much credit and that it was doing so well was because of the fact that it was a slow climb up and up and up and up and up and up and up for a really long time. And it hit the record that it was ever at. And then it did a pop for a day. Boom, it went down, and now it's going to start climbing up again. That's why I said it's not that big of a thing. We're weeding out, we're bleeding the system to make sure that there's no bubbles in there. Because when you artificially hike it up, then you're going to have those blips. When you eat artificial food, I don't know how many more metaphors I can create for this to make people understand this, especially on the progressive side. When you eat artificial food, let's say you go to a fast food restaurant that, as you know, is not really food at times. They add other chemicals and things in it. By the way, I saw, speaking of that, I saw a story on MSN yesterday about McDonald's French fries. And you know McDonald's French fries, they have like 11 or 15 different types of chemicals in it. Outside of the U.S., there's only like 3 or 4 that are a little more natural. But McDonald's French fries in the U.S., there's like 11 to 15 different chemicals in it. One of them apparently cures male baldness. And they actually had the story about how men could eat more McDonald's French fries and cure baldness. But I digress. When you eat artificial food, doesn't it make your tummy a little upset and you have a little more air coming out one way or the other? Same thing, as opposed to when you eat healthy, all-natural food. Doesn't really do that to you because it's easier to digest. Same thing with the cars I mentioned. After the 100,000 miles and you're running, you're going to have a little bit of an air bubble in there. So you need to bleed it to make sure that you don't have any air bubbles. When you artificially jack up an economy based on inflation, based on quantitative easing, based on printing money and injecting it in to be able to create the stimulus as opposed to allowing the private sector to grow and stimulate itself, then you're going to have the air bubbles. And as we go from the unhealthy foods to finally going to the healthy foods and allowing the economy to grow the way that needs to naturally, then we're going to start working out those air bubbles. It's like the guy like myself who has not worked out in the last 6 years and all of a sudden says, hey, I'm going to start working out and I'm going to get myself healthy again. And it doesn't work out very well. And you start hurting after that. That's what we're going through right now, the growing pains of the economy because we're growing all natural. And we're going to Whole Foods as opposed to McDonald's nowadays. 316-721-8255. It's a very interesting concept, but you're absolutely right. If they take claim for the Barack Obama economy and think that it's also great and that's what led the stock market to be at the highest it's ever been, then they also need to take claim for the fact that Barack Obama destroyed it by creating an air bubble in there as well. So chew on that one, progressives. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I wanted to get to this. I didn't get a chance to. We'll talk about this after we play our interview with Keith Esau. But there is a chemistry teacher in Kansas, as we're talking about the immigration debate, which, if you remember, the government could potentially shut down again Thursday this week. The House of Representatives was off all last week when it comes to voting. They did not vote at all last week. They are still trying to craft a bill, budgetary bill, along with an immigration reform bill, and they really need to pass both of them by Thursday, which is not going to happen, which means we're probably going to shut down the government again. Probably another reason why the economy went down a little bit with the stock market, anticipating another government shutdown, potentially a longer-term one, because the Democrats refuse to compromise and negotiate because they think that we should be the ones to compromise everything we want to and negotiate everything from our terms and give up what we believe in to give them whatever they want. But as we're debating all of this, there's a story that popped up the last couple of days. Kansas chemistry teacher fights an immigration arrest. And this is coming out of Lawrence, Kansas. Hat tip to Cake TV on this story. Supporters of a Kansas chemistry instructor hope immigration officials will be lenient because he has lived in the United States for 30 years without problems and has a family. Typical DACA dreamer recipient, right? Quote unquote dreamer. This individual, Saeed Ahmed Jamal, is the chemistry teacher from Bangladesh. His family came here 30 years ago, and he came here originally on a student visa. And now, still living on a student visa. So we'll have that story, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth into the details of that when we come back after the bottom of the hour. But when we do come back, I want to play first our interview with Keith Esau. He's a state representative, also running for the Secretary of State position. So everybody in the state, including everybody in the western part of the state, in the Garden City area, you have an opportunity to hear what he has to say both on the legislative issues, but then along with his run for the Secretary of State. We will be talking to every single one of the Secretary of State candidates, maybe even the Democrat if we can get him on the show. But we've talked to Scott Schwab before. We'll get him back on the show, along with Kelly Arnold, who is also the state Republican chair. And he's in Washington, D.C. right now. But when he does come back and return, we'll talk to him about both the Republican convention coming up in a couple weeks, along with the run for the Secretary of State position. Your thoughts and calls as well. Lots to get to today. It's a voice of reason. It's a Tuesday morning. Welcome into it. Stay right here.
Andy doesn't tolerate name-calling.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
But if you want to try, call the show at 316-721-8255 right now. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Oh, yeah. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Starting your week off the right way. You don't even need a cup of coffee with this show. We'll get you pumped, baby. That's the way we roll. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I'm excited about today. Not only is it a Tuesday, it's not a Monday, which is even better. But I'm excited. We've been giving tickets away for this. We did yesterday. We'll give some more away today. Stay tuned in for it. But Avenged Sevenfold, one of the more mainstream rock metal bands, is coming to Intrust Bank Arena here in the Wichita area tonight. I will be attending that, and really, really looking forward to it. Not really one that's like been on the bucket list per se, but they're a really good mainstream band. Now, if you know me, I listen to non-mainstream, a little more on the fringe, a little bit deeper, darker, heavier music, but at the same time, on the mainstream side, they're pretty good, and they're kind of on the edgier side, so I really enjoy that. So I'm going to that concert tonight. It's going to be great. Tomorrow, maybe a struggle a little bit because I'm not used to being out. Look, waking up at 4 a.m., my alarm to go to bed is at like 7:30 at night. So it'll be a little bit interesting in the morning, but nonetheless, we'll have a lot of fun with it, and we'll continue to roll along. So it's going to be a great day. Let's have a little fun with it. And hopefully you can have a great Tuesday as well. All right, I want to play this interview. We got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and jump into it. State Representative Keith Esau, he jumped on the phone with us yesterday and talked about both some legislative issues along with his run for the Secretary of State position, explaining exactly what the Secretary of State for the state of Kansas does and the importance of the role and what he wants to see coming out of this position. This is State Representative Mr. Keith Esau. Mr. Keith Esau is on the line with us. Keith, good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me on.
I appreciate you coming on here. And first up, before we get into anything else, talk about yourself. Talk about your background a little bit. I know that you've been in the state and the state house for a bit and now looking to run for Secretary of State. What's led you to that point to say, you know what, maybe I could do have better services and offer better services from the Secretary of State position as opposed to in the House of Representatives?
Well, I've always been interested in maps and elections. I actually looked at running for Secretary of State before I knew what I was doing back in 2006. But I've worked for a long time. I worked within the party to recruit people, always interested in where the map lines were and why the map lines were drawn certain ways, make sure that the process is fair and that everybody has the ability to get out and vote. And I just... I'm a chair of the elections committee now in the House.
Sure.
And I'm glad I've learned a lot of the process by working in the House, and I think it's time to move up. And I'm also a computer IT professional, so I think with all the attacks that are coming on voter databases and other things, we need to make sure that we have an IT professional at the top of the ticket there to keep our voter data safe.
Talk about the role itself of the Secretary of State position, because it's gotten a lot of news. Normally, a lot of people don't really follow the Secretary of State's position. They don't really care. They go to the website sometimes just to get their letter of good standing if they open up a business or if they're concerned about how to get registered or if they want to run for office themselves. But other than that, it's not a position that most people really look at as a mainstream type of position. And if they're not familiar, talk about the duties of the Secretary of State.
Well, you're right. The Secretary of State is basically a records-keeping office. They keep track of all the business filings, the annual reports from businesses, the lien holdings, which is a vital area that we need to protect as well. We don't want anybody changing who holds a lien on a property. They do cemetery audits, which is one of those obscure things. They validate or register all the notaries who witness every kind of document that you're signing. So there's a lot of little things that the Secretary of State's office does, but they're all vital things to the way our state works and the economy in our state, and we want to make sure that everything is done efficiently and improve the way that we can assist businesses in getting their reports done and finding all the certain forms that they need to file.
Sure. Have you seen, by your tracking of this, I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, you've been interested in this area for a while. Have you seen, and even from the legislative standpoint, an increase or a decrease, or where are we at looking with the number of filings for small businesses in the state of Kansas? Are we seeing that kind of stagnate? Are we seeing an uptick or a downtick? Where are we at when it comes to that office and seeing small businesses want to try and file to become a small business in the state?
Well, we've seen an increase. the LLC break that we had was the only break that we really gave to small businesses. We give lots of breaks to big businesses in terms of TIFs and certain bonds and things in the communities, but we don't ever give those breaks to small businesses. Well, the LLC tax break that we had for a few years was a stimulus that brought in lots of small businesses and got lots of people to think about starting their own small business, because you need that initial break, especially when you're starting a small business, to be able to build up the business.
Sure. No, absolutely. Let's go into the idea, as you mentioned, with the voter registration. I know it's been a huge issue under Secretary of State Chris Kobach, with him trying to put a little more stringent laws in effect for the registration. A lot of people fighting against that. The ACLU's been up in arms about it for quite a bit. From your perspective, if you were in this position, do you think that the voter registration in the state, the voter data, and trying to cross-check and make sure there is no shenanigans, has this entire issue been blown out of proportion? Do you think it's a serious issue? Where should we go from this point on when it comes to this discussion?
Well, what we have in place are what most Kansans think are common sense proposals. You should need to show your ID when you come to vote. You should be a citizen to register to vote. I've gone to lots of small groups, and the only place I've seen people complaining about this is the ACLU and some people in the paper. But everybody I meet with in the coffee shops across Kansas, they think this is common sense. We protect our right to vote. It's not only a right; it's a responsibility and a duty to vote. And we want people who are involved in the process and we want to keep those protections in place.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's go back to one of the first things you mentioned when it comes to the lines being drawn for different districts. I saw an amendment being proposed, I believe it was from the House, I don't remember if it was the House or Senate right now, about changing the number of legislators in the House and in the Senate to try and make it a little more reflective with a 3-to-1 ratio. I mentioned about a couple weeks ago, about the idea of potentially adding more legislators to both chambers, because I think that after the growth of the state, that we've had really a harder time being able to not only hold elected officials accountable, but having the proper representation based on districts. And if we redraw lines, if we redistrict a little bit, if we try and make it a little more fair, is that an opportunity? Would you support something like adding more elected officials, representatives and senators in order to try and make the districts a little bit smaller for a little bit more representation?
Well, that's an interesting concept. I mean, the two bills that we have right now are to make it so that the Senates have staggered terms, so they would have to elect leadership every 2 years, and we'd always have a Senate election every cycle. One of them also realigns the map so that we have 3 representatives for each senator, and they would be contained exactly within that Senate district, which would make the method of redistricting a little bit easier in that respect. That we'd start with one map and then divide each Senate district into 3. And the other part of that was to limit the number of senators, or increase the number of senators possibly to 41, but decrease the House to 123, which would be, exactly 3 times the number of Senate.
Sure.
We actually have some of the smallest districts in the U.S. in terms of the number of people within the district. Kansas has more elected representatives than any per capita than any other state.
Sure. Well,
most of that is down in the townships, so.
Sure. No, absolutely, and that's good. And I love the more that we can have the smaller districts, in my opinion, the better. So that way we can have that proper representation. So it's interesting to watch, and I love being able to, as you mentioned, it's very fascinating to watch how the lines are drawn when it comes to the districts. And now, how often are we able to redistrict? Is it every 10 years or so?
Well, we do it every 10 years. We could actually do it more often, but we usually are spending a lot of time doing other things and don't want to upset the apple cart in the middle of a cycle. So we will do it every 10 years. The next time is in 2022, and we will we'll get new maps, and the shifts in Kansas have been interesting too. We'll have a map that will be we'll have more than 50% in urban areas next time.
Fantastic. Very good. State Representative Keith Esau, also candidate for the Secretary of State position. We got just a couple minutes left, but talk about, again, your platform. What do you want to see? If you were Secretary of State right now, what would you like to do? And your message to all the listeners and the potential voters right now that are looking to see who's going to be our next Secretary of State.
Well, I would like to make sure that we keep our protections in place. We put in place ways to make it easier for people to help people and assist people in finding the documents they need for registering to vote. I want to be in the office a lot more than some of our previous secretaries of state have been. I've got a perfect attendance record in the House here, and I intend to be in the office more than 75% of the time during. There are times when you have to go out of state to do other things, but I want to make the Secretary of State's office available to the people and make all sorts of filings easier to do. Very good. Keith, how can people get a hold of you? Go to my website, KeithEsau.com. That's KeithEsau.com. And all my information for getting a hold of me is there. Right there, that's State Representative Keith Esau. Again, KeithEsau.com if you want to check him out. Running for Secretary of State for the state of Kansas, along with being a current state representative, and talking a little bit about what's to come with our legislative session. It's interesting to hear about the amendment. We'll talk about this when we come back for a minute as well, about the staggered Senate races and the amendment to try and change up how we do the elections here in the state of Kansas, making it a little bit more frequent, a little bit more accountable, and for us to be able to have a little bit larger say. Hopefully we can have a little bit larger voice. We'll talk about that when we come back. Open lines to you as well as we wrap up hour number 1. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Helps if I turn my microphone on. There we are. I'm excited. What can I say? It's a Tuesday. It's a great day. Let's get you pumped up. I just start talking, start rambling on. I'm like, why can't I hear myself? Oh, yeah. Helps if the microphone's on. Good go. I'm a professional. It's okay. I got this handled. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, thanks again to State Representative Keith Esau joining the program and talking about his run for Secretary of State. I believe that we have Scott Schwab, another state representative, coming on the show either this week or next, talking about his run for Secretary of State as well, along with Kelly Arnold, who is the chair of the Kansas Republican Party. He is also running, and then we do have a Democrat as well. We'll reach out and see if we can get them on the show. I don't know why. I don't know if they're intimidated or what, but it's very difficult to get Democrats on the show to talk with me. And if you notice, with my style of the show, I am not a bully. I do not bully individuals. I do not get the gotcha questions. I don't do that. I'm not the mainstream media where they have their political agenda and they try and abuse that when they have guests on their show. You ever watch like Meet the Press on Sundays with Chuck Todd? And they have the Republicans on there, at least they invite them on. But then it's like, why do you believe that? Well, I believe in, I don't want to hear your answer. You're an evil, terrible Republican. I don't do that on this show. I have my strong beliefs. I have my opinions. I express my opinions on this show. That's why it's a conservative talk show. I did get accused of being a unbiased or a biased journalist. Oh, you're a journalist and you don't even try and cover it up very well. No, because I'm not a journalist. I never wanted to be a journalist. I never wanted to be a news reporter. I never wanted to be, oh, here's the news. You can, no, I can't do that. I'm an opinionated individual. I got to express my opinions. But at the same time, when I have a guest on the show, whether I believe them, whether I agree with them or not, it's their time, even as a caller. If a caller tries to call in and argue with me, you'll notice I may disagree with them, and I'll ask them a question to defend their position, but I will not do the aha gotcha questions to make them look bad, and I will not abuse them. I will not rail on them. I will not do that. That's not my style. I'm just a lovey-dovey kind of get-along kind of guy. I have my opinions, and they're very strong opinions, but I'm also a debater, and I want to not only make you defend your position, but understand your position to the point to where you're able to argue it efficiently. And that's what I'm about. So if we get a Democrat on the show that's running for an office, I will give them the floor. I will give them the time. I will let them explain themselves. I will let them get their piece out. I will ask them the tough questions to defend their position, but I will not rail on them. And that's what I do on the show. So we'll try and get some Democrats on. We'll reach out. Especially, we tried the last special election here for the 4th Congressional District after Mike Pompeo had left the congressional seat and went on to become the head of the CIA, and it was the big race between Ron Estes and James Thompson. We reached out to James Thompson numerous times, refused to come on the show, so we ended up playing clips from a radio interview he did with NPR. I mean, hey, come on, we got to get to know the candidate, right? So that's what we ended up doing there. When we come back after the top of the hour, I'm already out of time, and I just bantered too long. When we come back, I do want to shift gears a little bit. There are two stories that I really, really, really want to get to today. One of them is a potential new tax that's coming on you. If you remember yesterday, we talked about how they're wanting to lower your sales tax for food because the Democrats really care about your budget. The Democrats really care about your budget to be able to buy food on a daily basis. They really care about that, which is why they had the largest income tax increase in the state history. They really care about your budget to make sure that you can pay your bills properly. They really, really care about that, which is why they raise your taxes twice, retroactively on one of them. But now they're talking about going into an election year saying, well, you know what, maybe we went a little too far. Let's lower sales tax in 2020. Or 2019, it begins 2020 when it's all said and done. They want to lower it from 6.5% that it is currently right now to, in 2019, 4.5%. And then by 2020, going down to 2 or 2.5% and dropping it dramatically, which sounds great, sounds really great, but it doesn't make any sense on why they're doing it now other than just the political play. And if you go along with it and say, yeah, that sounds awesome, I'm going to support a Democrat again because they not only repealed the Governor Brownback failed policies, but they're also lowering my sales tax. This is a great deal. That's going to be their campaign tactic. Mark my words. That's what they're going to try for the next election. And it's going to work for some. Look at that. Number one, we repealed the Brownback failed policies. We got our state back on track. We're giving money to education. And, oh, by the way, we're also lowering your food sales tax. You should really love us Democrats, even though it's going to drive us into another deficit. And then they're going to turn around after we elect them November. And then by next year for the 2-year budget, they're going to raise your taxes again because that's what they have to do. We'll talk about that and more when we come back. This is your show. As always, it's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. Hour number 2, The Voice of Reason, coming up in a minute.
Speak. It's time for Reason.
That's the priorities our government has set. We just talked about the state budget and where the money's going and how much taxes they want to increase on us. Now we're looking at the federal level and looking at a federal budget reform on what we can do to get our budget under control. And instead of worrying about where the money's going and what our tax rate's going to look like and what our spending's going to look like, we're too concerned with giving amnesty to illegal aliens. Notice the priority of the progressives.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah, welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, along with KGPT TV channel 2610. Welcome aboard. Happy Tuesday. It's great to have you along with us as we start off a brand new, wonderful, beautiful day. Little cold, that's all right. Al Gore will fix it with this global warming. It'll be all fine. And then just in a few weeks, it'll be nice and warm again, not because it's springtime, but because Al Gore corrected the weather. And then we can thank him for that all over again. That's the way that we need to think of this. That's the way that the progressives' minds actually work. No, it's not springtime. No, it's not the change of season. It's the fact that we corrected global cooling to global warming and then back to global cooling again. That'll happen around probably September, October. Be prepared for that one. Look at that. See, I'm already just as much of a meteorologist and a weather predictor as the progressives. Welcome into it. Hour number 2, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, you can shoot me a message all over social media. We are pretty much everywhere. Although I don't get on the whole, I don't even know, the Pinterest or LinkedIn or, we don't worry about those. We are on Facebook on the Voice of Reason page, the KQAM page. We are on Twitter at Hoosier Reason. We are on the email, Andy@KQAMradio.com. We also have the Facebook live feed rolling, and I do appreciate if you like it and share it. Like and share the page. I really appreciate when you do so. As you know, that the algorithms for Facebook like to restrict conservative messages being spread across social media, and sometimes we don't get as many views and as many hits as we would like, or as many people that just can't find it. So go to the page, go to KQAM, Facebook.com/1480KQAM. You can like the Facebook live feed and share it onto your own page, and let's blast this out everywhere because this is the fastest growing program in the entire state of Kansas. All right, I want to get into a few issues, and it's funny. There's two stories that I found that I've been kind of hanging on to for a couple of days, finding a way to present them properly, and come to find out, I'm finding a common theme behind both of them at the same time. So I want to address them individually, but then the overall theme right at the same time. And the first one I want to start off, do you remember, hands up in the air, I want to see how many of you remember the DARE program at schools? The DARE, not to smoke, not to do drugs, not to do bad things. Remember that? The officers would come into the school and come into I remember this very vividly. They would come to all of the different projects that we would go at, the outside projects. If you got to go and see the different fire trucks, you got to see the police force, or you got to see whatever, they would have the DARE truck or the DARE trailer right there. The officers would come into the classroom and they would talk about don't smoke because smoking's really bad. If you even remember, they even would use they would cut the little hole into the ketchup squirt bottle, and they would stick some cotton balls in there, and then they would stick the cigarette on, and they would squeeze it and light it, and then so how much tobacco would go into the cotton ball as an example of what your lungs would look like after you smoke. You remember all this. It was a really, really great program. I don't know why they ended it. I think they ended it. From what I had heard, I don't remember them being around anymore, but it was a really great program. And nowadays, we don't see something like that. But back then, let's just say that DARE was still around. And they would go to the classroom. Oh, that's right, because cops are bad and that we don't want kids to be around cops, right? That's probably what it is. Who knows? But let's just say back in the day that we had the DARE program, or that it was still going on today. But then the cops would turn around after they would use the little squirt bottle, the ketchup squirt bottle, and they would breathe in the cigarettes into the cotton ball, and they'd show the tobacco on the cotton ball. And they would say, don't smoke because it's really bad, and look at what you're doing to your lungs. And then they'd have the nice little glass case between the healthy lung that's clear and then the dirty lung that's really brown and dirty and bad looking. And say, don't do drugs or don't smoke because it's really, really bad for you. But we're going to raise taxes on cigarettes in the state. So that way, when you go to school this year, you're going to get brand new books because we are going to use the tax money on cigarette sales. Now, I'm not against smoking. I don't care. I'm not one that wants to go around. I'm not a Rob Reiner that wants to go around and try and ban smoking all over the place because they want to enforce their utopian tyranny all over everybody. I'm not one of those individuals. I don't care. If you want to smoke, all the power to you because you're only harming yourself. Should you smoke? No. Could it cause lung cancer? Yeah. Is it really darn expensive? Absolutely. And I don't want to spend my budget on something like that. I'd rather spend it on beer. But nonetheless, if you smoke, that's your own prerogative. Kind of like the wearing the seatbelts or wearing the helmet as a motorcycle rider. Should you? Duh. Should it be enforced? No. If you fall down and get an accident on your motorcycle and you bang up your head and you don't make it, well, that was your own damn fault. I'm kind of one of those. We don't need laws to protect ourselves from ourselves, and it goes along with smoking as well. But the hypocrisy in the government drives me nuts. They're giving us mixed signals. It's giving us mixed signals. Let's use another example. Let's say that law enforcement is running low on funds to be able to enforce DUIs. Because there are a lot of DUIs, and more people are beginning to drink and drive, and they're beginning to have DUIs all over the place. So what are they going to do? They're going to raise sales tax on liquor at bars and at liquor stores in order to fund the law enforcement to go enforce DUIs. Does that make any sense in any way, shape, or form at all? No. Let's use another one, shall we? Let's say that we're an anti-abortion group and that we want to fight abortions, but we're running low on funds. So we use government subsidies that they use, or that we get donations, and we get the donations to fight the abortions from an abortion clinic selling the organs from a child. Does that make any sense whatsoever? No. That's the hypocrisy of the government, and we need to find the proper sources to use our tax money and where we're getting our tax money. And I'm finding more and more that a lot of these stories are just nothing more than ways to actually advocate for Medicaid expansion in the state of Kansas. And for one example, the reason I bring up with the cigarettes is because I saw this story. Kansans and Missouri are flunking this health group's test. Higher taxes would help. Missouri and Kansas, according to the American Lung Association's 2018 report, Missouri got 4 Fs and a D, while Kansas got 4 Fs and an A when it comes to smoking cigarettes and tobacco. When it comes to the American Lung Association, the Lung Association's recommended Kansas cover more smoking cessation methods under the Medicaid program. Missouri enacted a statewide ban on smoking in public places, and both states have increased funding on tobacco prevention, hiked tobacco sales tax rates, and raised the legal age to purchasing cigarettes to the age of 21. Does that sound anything like a normal type of scenario to where, you know what, we're running into bad options here. We're having more people smoke. We're having lung cancer issues, and we're graded very, very poorly as a state, both Missouri and the state of Kansas, on us being able to prevent people smoking. So what should we do? We should raise the taxes on the tobacco to disencourage individuals from buying it, but then also use the money to create tobacco prevention. Does that make any sense? And then along the way, we should also increase Medicaid expansion. Here's what I mean. The only bright spots on the report card were for A in Kansas' statewide smoking ban, and D, and a D better than an F for Missouri's Medicaid coverage smoking options. Kansas right now has a sales tax of $1.29 a pack, which was a 50-cent increase in 2015. The national average still $1.68, however, which is so Kansas is still lower than the national average. What they suggest, and what the American Lung Association suggests, is that we increase Medicaid expansion in order to create different preventative methods to stop people from smoking, or different programs and different treatments in order to help people begin to stop the addiction of smoking. Not to mention, Kansas Representative Stephen Johnson, a Republican from Assaria, who is the chair of the House Taxation Committee, said he sees a potential path forward for cigarette tax hikes this year. We just increased your income tax rates. They're looking at maybe lowering your sales tax on your food, but now they want to raise your taxes on cigarette purchases as well. Again, why? The legislature needs money to shore up the state budget and fulfill the Kansas Supreme Court's decision on education funding. So you want to use tobacco sales in order to fund education and or the expansion of Medicaid in the state. Don't smoke because it's really, really bad for you. But at the same time, if you're going to smoke, then pay the really high sales tax so we can buy new classroom books and we can expand our education funding to take care of the kids who we're telling not to smoke cigarettes. Or don't smoke and don't put that in your lungs. But if you're going to pay the really high sales tax rate, so that way we can expand Medicaid, so when you get sick, we can cover you. Does this make any sense to anybody? Does this not pop up as the red flag as one of the most hypocritical, stupidest ideas I've ever heard in my life? I don't understand how we come to the conclusion of let's raise the sales tax on cigarettes when we're encouraging people not to smoke cigarettes, but then the government's going to become dependent on the sales tax of cigarettes, so continue to smoke cigarettes. That's where we're at right now. And it makes no sense to me whatsoever. Does it to you? Because right now we have option A, either raise the sales tax on cigarettes to pay for Medicaid expansion and programs to stop people from smoking, or option B, we raise sales tax on cigarettes to be able to fund education while we tell our kids not to smoke. They did this same thing out in Colorado when they actually legalized marijuana and said that the first $40 million or so was going to go towards the reconstruction of new school buildings while you're going to school and telling kids not to do drugs. Don't do drugs. But by the way, guess how you got your brand new shiny school building is people were smoking pot. all the potheads paid for their tax money to be able to get you a new school. But don't do drugs, kids, because drugs are bad, okay? 316-721-8255, 316. I've never seen stupid hypocrisy like this. Why do we want to be dependent on the sales tax of a product that we're wanting to get rid of and have people not do? Because if we create it, look, if we increase the sales tax on it, just like anything else the government does, when it finds the sales tax revenue, it doesn't want to let it go. And if we do see a decrease in people buying it because either they're going across state lines to buy their cigarettes or they stop altogether because it's too damn expensive, then what are we going to do with that tax revenue hole that the government's now seeing? Oh, yeah, they're going to raise taxes on everybody. So it's isolated right now to the current smokers to say, yeah, we'll either increase Medicaid expansion or we'll be able to fund education. With this money, people stop buying cigarettes in the state of Kansas or they stop smoking altogether. We see a revenue hole, and then guess what? Our income tax goes up. Our sales tax on food goes back up. Our gas tax goes up. Our property tax goes up. Whatever they want to look at that time that says, yeah, we got to fill that hole because we're not going to shrink it. Of course not. We're not going to shorten the money and say, well, it's gone. Guess we don't need that program anymore. They're not going to do that. They're going to say, we're running on a shortfall. What are we going to do again? Guess we better raise taxes. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Nathan.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good.
Good.
I was hearing about that you were talking about the DARE program, and I just wanted to say that, yes, it is still going on, and today is the day that I'm going on DARE also. Oh, very good.
It's very good to hear. I didn't know that they were still doing that. I had heard that in many places that they stopped doing the DARE program, so that's encouraging.
Well, I've never seen the ketchup packet thing yet, but yeah, they're still doing it.
Very good. That's really good to hear. I appreciate the call for that. Thank you. That's encouraging. That made my day right there, knowing that there is still DARE, because I thought it was a wonderful program. I thought it was fantastic to know that we had law enforcement coming, not only just familiarizing themselves with students and making kids actually feel comfortable with law enforcement, but at the same time talking about smoking and how bad it is for you and how you shouldn't be doing that. Now, should we have laws banning it? No. They also went into the banning about the restaurants and how people are enjoying the restaurants without the smoke everywhere and not having to be around smokers, which I think that should be up to the business owner to make that decision on whether they want to allow smokers or have a smoking section or just ban it altogether. Not the government's prerogative, is it? But yet we live in a different world called tyranny. 316-721-8255. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Jim.
Hey, good morning, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Beautiful morning.
Absolutely.
Great segue to my comment, which is the hypocrisy of shutting down a cigar bar so you can't have a cigar inside, but making it legal to smoke in a state-run casino.
Now, I have not heard that one. So wait a second. You can't even have a smoking lounge or a cigar smoking bar anymore here in the state?
You can't smoke inside a Mort's cigar bar downtown. You have to go outside.
Wow. I wasn't even aware of that.
But you can in the casino when you're gambling. You give money to the state.
Sure, you give money to the state with your gambling, and yeah, just give your money away, but you want to go to a cigar lounge and actually enjoy and have a good time and smoke a cigar, which I am a cigar aficionado. I love cigars. I shouldn't say an aficionado. I don't know much about them, but I love smoking them. But so, no, you got to go outside to smoke your cigar in the cold. That's nice.
Yeah. Have a great day.
Hey, I appreciate it, Jim, very much there. I wasn't even aware of that. Now, I knew about a lot of the public buildings that you couldn't smoke, either cigarettes or cigars or anything, but you would think in a private cigar lounge of people wanting to go and enjoy a stogie that you're not even allowed to do that. See, right there. Prime example. Don't smoke. It's a really bad thing. We're going to kick you out in the cold. But by the way, let's legalize marijuana, but then let's also tell you how bad drugs are, and then let's be dependent on all the sales tax for all of these products, because we really need the money. So let's hike it up. Currently, what do we say? $1.29 for a sales tax in the state for a pack of cigarettes. They want to raise it up more to either expand Medicaid or to be able to help fund some of the education programs in the state. Your thoughts on this? Is it hypocrisy? And is this something that we should fight pretty drastically? Or should we just go along with the flow because we have that opportunity to do so? All right. I want to make you aware of a great event happening tonight. It's happening tonight. I'm really excited about this. I am pumped to go to this show tonight. It is Avenged Sevenfold along with Breaking Benjamin. Kind of a nice little metal band that I have enjoyed for a while. Kind of a mainstream band, but nonetheless a fantastic one. I'm really excited about it. We have a few tickets left to give away for this. If you can go to the show tonight, it's in Trust Bank Arena. It's at 6:25. 7 o'clock is the show. Doors open at 6:30. Let's have a little fun with it. Let's see who can do the quick of the draw right now. And the first one to call, 721-8255, 721-TALK. The first one to get on the horn will get you a pair of tickets for Avenged Sevenfold tonight. It's going to be a great show. I'll be there. May have to jump into the mosh pit just a little bit because we have an opportunity to do so. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
In the shadows, feel this weight of sin hammering away. Die with the guilt of 1,000 AWOL soldiers. Die, watch the sight usher me.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Oh, man, I love it. Congratulations to James for winning the pair of tickets to Avenged Sevenfold Breaking Benjamin tonight. I got one pair left. One pair left we'll give away in the 8 o'clock hour. The show's tonight. I'm really pumped about this. I'm really excited. Not to mention that we are, by the way, the coolest conservative talk show in the entire country. No other show in the country that's a conservative talk show on the radio and on TV and or either one is able to get away metal tickets like we are here. That's just awesome right there. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We also, by the way, get ready. Sometime this hour, we'll probably get someone registered for the Ultimate Valentine's Day giveaway from KQAM and Autotech. Really excited about that one, too. So stay tuned. We'll start getting you registered. It's going to be one person getting registered every day between now and next Tuesday. We'll have 7 entries, and then we'll give it away on Valentine's Day on Wednesday. So get ready to hear that sounder. We'll play the sounder here for you sometime, probably this hour, and we'll get you registered for KQAM and Autotech's Ultimate Valentine's Day giveaway, a value of over $75 for that giveaway package. It's going to be great. Bottom of the hour news, we'll continue this discussion about the hypocrisy of the sales tax and what it means for the argument for Medicaid expansion. Also, the other story that relates to the emotional touchy-feely side of why we need to expand government health care. We'll touch on that when we come back.
Taking talk radio to the next level. The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
That's what I'm saying. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Coming up in about a half hour, we got some big news. Everybody living in House District number 87. Got some news. We'll have a guest on, Renee Erickson. She's going to be joining us talking about her plans for the district. We'll talk about that coming up in about a half hour. Until then, it's up to you. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Broadcasting all across the South Central Kansas area, right here on the Big Talker, KQAM, along with KGPT TV. Welcome aboard. Happy Tuesday. Real quick, we got some calls on the line, and let's get to them. But real quick, as a recap, if you're just tuning in, the big hypocrisy in sales tax. I don't understand why it's okay to be hypocritical when it comes to our sales tax revenue and what we try to preach to the general public. Don't smoke. Don't do drugs. It's really, really bad. But at the same time, the sales tax when you buy these products is what's going to continue to fund the government. And the latest story, the emotional. Notice it's the emotional touchy-feely argument. Oh, look, people are being harmed by cigarettes. Oh, look, people are being sick with cigarettes. Oh, look, people that smoke and that are on Medicaid aren't getting the proper treatment through the Medicaid program. So we need to raise the sales tax of cigarettes in order to fund more programs of treatment through Medicaid. Oh, look, the schools are being insufficiently funded. Oh, look, we're $600 million to $1.5 billion short in the education funding. Let's raise cigarette sales and taxes in order to fund the gap when it comes to educational funding. But all this while we're saying that we're going to do this, don't smoke cigarettes. Don't smoke. It's really bad for you. It's going to make you sick. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Yeah. So we're going to raise the sales tax potentially on cigarettes, which it sounds like it even has bipartisan support, with the Republicans, the one actually hyping this up, saying, yeah, it's kind of a good idea. And saying, yeah, let's raise it so that way we can fund more treatment programs through Medicaid to stop people from smoking, or to break people from smoking, or to take care of them after they have smoked. But don't smoke. But you need to, because that's how we're going to afford it. I don't understand why this doesn't blink up as the big radar of total hypocrisy. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's go to the phones here and let's talk to Gary. Gary, good morning, sir. What's going on?
Good morning, Andy. Hey, you're hitting on all 8 cylinders. I tell you, I couldn't agree with you more.
Well, thank you. It's frustrating, isn't it? They tell you not to do something while they say, please continue to do it because that's how we're going to fund our government.
Well, I wonder when, well, first of all, I'd like to say every congressman that is for this should be ousted, because if that's the way they want to legislate, that's just not right. And you're right, it's tyranny. There's thousands of small business owners who smoke, and they either do it illegally or they don't.
Sure.
But and so the state is forcing someone into an illegal activity, if you want to get right down to it. And then when the first cigarette settlement come out, how much of that money was put back into hospitals or research? I believe, if I remember correctly, an article years ago said that some of that money went to golf courses.
Oh, sure. Well, it went in, from my understanding of it, when we got the tobacco settlement for the state, that it went into the general funds, because actually for the last few years, for the budget proposal that Governor Brownback had been doing, this is the problem that many conservatives had with Governor Brownback's proposals when it came to the budget after the State of the State address, was that he was using revenue-oriented money coming into the state, like the tobacco settlements, to offset the general funds on what we can spend. So it went into the general fund pool, and then we had no idea where it went to, whether it went to education, whether it went to healthcare programs, whether it went to golf courses. We don't know, because as far as I'm aware, it went into our general funds.
Yeah, it's too bad that cigarettes are an easy enemy, because they do stink and they're not healthy. But by God, they're legal.
Sure.
So either make them illegal to sell cigarettes, or get them off the market completely, or leave us alone.
Well, and I'm right there with you, and I don't want to, look, I think this goes into, and this kind of goes into the same argument that I had with marijuana as well. I don't care if you do it. I don't want to, I don't like it. I don't personally do it. I don't care for it. But if we choose to legalize products, whether it's alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, no matter what the case is, legalize it, but we shouldn't be dependent on the sales tax of that. We shouldn't be using that as a revenue generator for the state, because while we're telling people not to do it because of how unhealthy or dangerous it may be for you, then you're saying, please continue on to do that, so that way we can buy things and we can spend the money at the state level. To me, it's total hypocrisy and completely absurd.
Yeah, exactly. And the next, to continue this, they're going to tax soda and candy bars to pay for our dentist bills.
Exactly. And that's a prime example. Gary, I appreciate that. That's a perfect example. I used the examples before about how we're going to start raising the sales tax on liquor, either at the bar or in the liquor store, in order to try and fund the enforcement of DUI awareness. I mean, to me, it's stupid. It's hypocrisy. Not to mention, then we even bring up the fact that local privately owned businesses can't even make the decision themselves whether they want to allow smokers or not in their rooms, in their buildings, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a bar. Come on. You're telling me that you can't sit at the bar and have a drink and have a smoke at the same time if you want to, because, it might hurt the person next to you. That's up to the prerogative of the business owner to decide whether they want to allow smoking or not. And then, as the consumer, then you get to choose whether you choose to go to that restaurant and or bar that allows smoking, and whether you're okay with that or whether you don't want to be around it and you go someplace that doesn't allow it. That's the beauty of the private sector, ladies and gentlemen, right there. You have the choice, and right now your choice is being taken away because it harms certain individuals that they want to oust, while they still say, please don't go anywhere, don't move, because we want you to stay here and continue to fund our government. So they're making you bend over backwards to try and not accommodate you, but try and make it as painful as possible for you to smoke, while they're telling you that we need to expand programs, so we're going to use the tax money, raise the sales tax rate, and then use that tax money in order to fund more programs. And if we ever go away, if they end up moving out of the state, If they end up stop smoking, if they end up stop drinking, whatever the case is that we're going to look at for that sales tax, then we're going to see the budget deficit happen because they've been dependent on that money, and then they're going to not know what to do. Same thing happened with the state of Colorado. Look, I don't care, and I know we've had this argument, and I don't want to really go down this road right now, but when it comes to legalization of marijuana, I don't care that you smoke in your basement. It makes no difference to me. I don't care. I don't want you to drive, but you're not allowed to drive and drink either. People still do it. But I don't want you to do that. But if we're going to legalize it, we need to do it the right way and say the government, stay off of it, stay out of it, stay away from it altogether. Do not put a sales tax on it. Do not regulate it. Just let it be. Let it do its thing. I don't care. It makes no difference to me. If you're going to smoke cigarettes, I don't care. Leave it alone. And don't be funding anti-smoking campaigns or trying to actually take care of the children through the sales tax of the product that you're telling people not to do. Doesn't make any sense to me. But it's the argument now because that's the latest argument to expand Medicaid. It's the emotional feeling. Oh, look at the sick people that are smoking. They're not getting the proper treatment on Medicaid. Let's expand Medicaid. Let's create these cigarette or tobacco treatments. Let's try and get them off of it. Let's try and stop their addiction, or let's try and cure them after they've been sick and they got lung cancer off of it. And let's be able to expand the Medicaid program to give them the proper treatment. And let's do it by raising the taxes on cigarettes. We don't like cigarette smokers anyways. Let's just raise the sales tax on them, right? That's the emotional argument that we're having. Now, the next emotional argument that we're seeing is now going to the women and now going to the emotional, touchy-feely family side because they're trying to play whatever angle they can to try and expand government socialized Medicare and Medicaid, government health care. Baby survival rates improved in states with Affordable Care Act, according to data. That's the headline. The Medicaid expansion provided eligibility to almost all low-income people who were below the 138% of the poverty line, which was $28,180 in 2017 for a three-person family, according to the nonprofit Kaiser Family Foundation. So we expanded Medicaid. It's starting to cover a lot of people under the poverty line threshold. And now they say this paper compared the infant mortality rate data from all 50 states, including Washington, D.C., between 2010 and 2016. They found that 19 states declined the expansion of Medicaid while D.C. and 31 other states accepted it. Overall, the infant mortality rate dropped 5.9 deaths per 1,000 live births in 2016. This was down from 6.7 deaths per 1,000 in 2010, which is nearly a 12% decrease. What do they say? They're now trying to link the expansion of Medicaid with the mortality rate of infants and babies, because now low-income poverty line individuals are able to get the care, quote-unquote, and therefore that's helping the babies that they are producing. The report also revealed that the mean infant mortality rate in states that didn't accept Medicaid expansion rose slightly from 6.4 to 6.5 from 2014 to 16 in states. Well, that's inaccurate because they didn't do the 14 to 16 comparison for the states that did expand it. And the states that accepted the expansion, the rate dropped 5.6 from 5.9 for every 1,000 births. So it did drop over the 6-year span. It rose over the last 2-year span, but it dropped overall for the 10-year span, the same that it did really for the Medicaid expanded states, but it dropped a little more dramatically in the Medicaid expanded states. Now playing the emotional argument that if you care about babies, then you will expand Medicaid. Then you will expand government health care, because government health care is apparently the only type of health care that can actually take care of your baby. Are you okay with that type of argument, with that type of ploy, with that type of political gamemanship? Because if you read a little bit further down the story, they even admit, here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the breaking news of the entire story. After they try and make this argument where they see the numbers of mortality rates dropping in states with Medicaid expansion, here's the big kicker. While the researchers believe Medicare expansion and Medicaid expansion had a significant impact, they don't know why. We increased Medicaid, we see more people being covered, and in the story itself, they can't even link the reasoning why. They just say, oh, look, these states did, these states didn't. Look at the mortality rate. It must be linked somehow. We just don't know how. So they have no proof. They have no evidence. They have no research that actually says this is the particular part of Medicaid expansion that actually covered the babies and the mortality rate for the babies and the infants. But nonetheless, you need to expand your government program so that way you can get it covered. Quote, our study could not identify which features of Medicaid expansion could account for the infant mortality rate reductions, especially in African-American infants. However, reductions in unintended pregnancies and improved pre-contraception, prenatal and maternal chronic disease, and mental health management for mothers throughout their child's infancy could have contributed to this reduction. And I would counter by saying it has nothing to do with technology. Has nothing to do with the doctors in the area, has nothing to do with the number of doctors, maybe that didn't get shut down by Medicaid expansion or did get it closed down by Medicaid expansion, the local family physicians, the type of doctors maybe that are in a certain area or community or culture or state, maybe the price of the doctors. I mean, come on, if you got Medicaid expansion, that means you really don't have to pay for it and nearly as much, which means that you can afford to go there all the time to do all the stuff as opposed to the evil, quote-unquote, private insurance where you're going to have to pay out the wazoo in order to afford it, right? That's just not true, but okay. Or maybe the lifestyle of the community. They even admit that many of the southern states and the southern hillbilly central of the country did not expand Medicaid, and they're seeing a little bit higher mortality rates. And I would say maybe because they haven't quite adapted to the new society. If you remember, some of those areas in the Deep South don't even like to go out into the communities. They kind of live in their own community. You don't go to them, and they don't come to you. And that's just the way it is. But come on. Between all the other factors that could have been implemented in here, all the different factors between culture, between state, between doctors, between price, between whatever, you're going to say, look at here. Here's Medicaid expansion, and now you're going to be able to take care of smokers, and you're going to be able to help the mortality rate of infants. Playing the emotional play with no type of example or evidence or proof in any way, shape, or form to actually prove your argument. You just make the story claiming, oh, yeah, look at this. It's the number we saw, and therefore we can lump it up as an assumption. Remember what they say when you assume something in the community? When you assume, yeah, it's not a good thing, is it? I think it's that time, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, here we go, people.
Call now at 721-8255 for your ultimate Valentine's.
Oh, there it is.
KQAM.
There it is. Let's go ahead and get you registered for the ultimate Valentine's Day giveaway. It's going to happen next Wednesday. We're registering somebody one each day for the next 7 days. Brought to you by Autotech. Here's what you get. You get a valued package at over $75, including a free oil change, windshield wiper blade replacement, wash and vacuum of the vehicle, along with a rose and a box of chocolates for your significant other. Let's do caller number one right now. We'll get you registered for the ultimate Valentine's Day giveaway, brought to you by Autotech and the Big Talker KQAM. Caller number one at 721-8255-721-TALK.
This is the voice of reason with Andy Hoosier.
Back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 2. Congratulations to Jeff for getting registered for the ultimate Valentine's Day, brought to you by Autotech and KQAM Radio. We'll give that away next Wednesday. We'll get some more people registered tomorrow. Stay tuned in for that. Also, I have one more pair of tickets to the Avenged Sevenfold concert tonight. We'll give that away in hour number 3 as well, so don't go anywhere, because these are awesome tickets, and they're going to be a lot of fun. So we'll do that giveaway next hour. Stay tuned in for that. Wrapping up this hour, coming up hour number 3, Renee Erickson going to be joining, talking about some big news coming out of District number 87 for the State House Representatives, and we'll talk to her coming up in just a few minutes. To wrap this one up, between the two stories that we've read, between the cigarette sales tax and wanting to expand Medicaid to fund tobacco awareness, tobacco treatment, tobacco whatever, along with the trying to feed the emotional argument about infant mortality rates when it comes to states that expanded or not expanded. When these stories come at you and they bombard you and you see the headlines through the mainstream media and you hear progressives talking about them, the very first thing that you should do is have your guard up. Always have your wall up and question everything. All the time. And you want to hear the facts. You want to hear the proof of what they're saying. And right now they don't have it. There is no evidence whatsoever in any way, shape, or form, and they even admit it in the story that there is no evidence or proof of what part of Medicaid expansion actually provided better mortality rates for infants. None. But it sounds really nice, doesn't it? If you're on the street and you heard that, you'd say, oh, well, I guess it must have been helping. I guess it must have been a really good thing. But it's not. The cigarettes. Think of the absolute hypocrisy of when you hear someone say we're going to stop and prevent tobacco users and smokers by raising the sales tax on it. Because as soon as they say we're going to raise the taxes on it to punish you, the people that want to smoke are still going to smoke. They've done it ever since the sales tax rate was 25 cents on cigarettes, and you could buy an entire pack for a couple bucks. And guess what? Now it's what, $6, $7, $8 for a pack of cigarettes, and you're still smoking. If they're going to stop, it's going to stop because they want to stop, not because the government told them to stop with the higher tax rate. But at the same time, if they're benefiting from telling you not to do it and trying to punish you for that sense by saying, we're going to punish you because you shouldn't be smoking, but we're just going to raise the sales tax on it, then you know that they have an end goal in it and that they're looking for a benefit out of it. And to tell you that they want to use the sales tax of cigarettes in order to expand Medicaid to treat people that have problems from smoking, then what happens when everybody stops smoking? They finally listen. Okay, we're not going to smoke anymore. It's really bad for us. I finally get it. We're either going to go out of the state because you guys have really high sales tax on it, or we're just going to stop smoking. Then what? They're going to shut down the program of Medicaid. They're going to shrink it back down again. Say, no, we don't need that cigarette prevention program anymore. No. They're going to say, we're running into a shortfall. I guess we better start touching on people's property taxes. Guess we better start talking about people's sales tax on food again, or on income tax, or on whatever. Because it's all about them. It's all about their motive, their agenda, their spending habits, whatever they want to spend their projects on, and they play it off to you as the nice PR campaign that they do as the government, saying, oh, we need to make you stop doing this program or stop doing this product or smoking this product or using this product, so therefore we're going to raise the tax really high on it. Like when they try to make you stop buying gas for your car because they wanted you to go to alternative energies, they raise the gas tax on you. Yeah, how'd that work out for you? Hour number 3, The Voice Reason, coming up. Stay here.
Speak. It's time for Reason.
That's the priorities our government has set. We just talked about the state budget and where the money's going and how much taxes they want to increase on us. Now we're looking at the federal level and looking at a federal budget reform on what we can do to get our budget under control. And instead of worrying about where the money's going and what our tax rate's going to look like and what our spending's going to look like, we're too concerned with giving amnesty to illegal aliens. Notice the priority of the progressives.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah, welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 3. The Voice Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, along with KGPT TV, channel 2610. Welcome aboard. Good Tuesday morning to you. It is really the greatest day of the week. It really is, I promise you. It's a Tuesday, which means you've gotten through the hardest day of the week, which is a Monday, and yet today is the day you can be super productive because then it's only downhill from here, and by Thursday you're totally checked out and need an adult beverage or two. That's the way the work week should be, not necessarily the way it always is. Welcome into it. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, you can shoot me a message all over social media on the KQAM page on Facebook. The Facebook Live feed is up and rolling, by the way. Like it and share it. Please do like it and share it. I've noticed, I know Joe Pags has an issue with this once in a while with the algorithms on Facebook trying to silence conservatives, and we don't want that to happen because we are the fastest growing program in the entire state of Kansas. So like it, share the Facebook Live feed. Let's get it all around, and let's let everybody know exactly what's happening in our area. You can email me as well, Andy@KQAMradio.com. I want to continue on the conversation in just a little bit when it comes to the taxes, the hypocrisy of the taxes, of what they're trying to implement, and the programs they're wanting to fund with the hypocritical sales tax on them. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, plus some other big news happening. And I have not forgotten, we still have some tickets to give away for the Avenged Sevenfold. 1 pair of tickets. And I tell you what, we gave the first pair away last hour. The phones blew up. Everybody wants them. I got 1 pair left. We'll give those away before the end of the show, coming up in the last half hour or so. But I'm really excited to get to our guest. As you know, it is right now the legislative session is underway. We have this fall the midterm elections and the general elections for the midterms, the primary election, I should say, in early end late summer, early fall, whatever. And then we have in November the general election for the midterms for the House of Representatives for the state of Kansas, among other races as well, including the governor's. But we have major big races happening, and this is the time for us to understand exactly what we're going to stand for and what we're going to do. And I'm really excited to get our next guest on, as she is looking at one of the seats for district number 87 for the House of Representatives. She is Renee Erickson. Renee, good morning to you. How are you today?
Good morning, Andy. I'm great. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's great to have you back on the show. It's been a little bit since we've talked to you on the air. The last time, actually, was when you were running a couple of years ago, running for the seat. So welcome back, and it's exciting news that you're looking to try and get that House seat number 87.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. Last run was a great experience, met lots of great people, and just looking to build on that momentum and hopefully come out with a victory this time.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. This is going to be, I've been saying this election, I think this midterm election is almost going to be more important than the last round back in 2016 because we had a drastic change. We had a lot of individuals where their sole agenda was to go up and reverse the Brownback agenda, to repeal the conservative experiment, to start raising taxes again, to spend more money, to really, really take care of the children through the education system. And that was the mentality. This next election is really going to be about, are we going to continue down that same path, or are we going to come back to our conservative traditional roots? Renee, what's your take on all this? What do you want to do if you get into that seat?
Well, absolutely, Andy. And, the sad thing is we had the largest increase in income tax in state history, and it really didn't solve anything. We're going to be looking in the same problems. They didn't fund CAPERS. They still are taking money from KDOT. It didn't solve anything except take more money out of the pockets of hardworking Kansans. And so that definitely isn't the answer. And so going forward, we've got to be able to look at cutting spending. And I've been out walking the district, and as I've been listening to folks, they are very concerned and they're confused as to why we can't cut spending instead of just simply always looking at raising taxes. So that's one of the things that I hope to go and question and fight for as well.
Well, it's good to hear the fact that you're on the streets and you're knocking on doors, and that's the mentality that you're hearing from people, because it's curious. It's always curious to see what people are saying in their homes, around the dinner table with their family, or on the street corner with their neighbors and friends, and whether they're saying, hey, because all you hear in the mainstream media is saying, well, when you knock on the doors, everybody's just saying, well, why can't we fund these projects and why can't we actually get the money for them? Yeah, we should be raising taxes. I've had a caller call in, I guess they're about a year or so ago, that actually said, hey, we should actually increase the educational funding to 75% of our entire state budget, because it doesn't matter however much money they need, we should give them, because we should just raise our taxes in order to make them feel filled to whatever point that is. And it doesn't matter how much money that takes.
Well, the sad thing about the education conversation, Andy, is I'm an educator. I was in public education for nearly 20 years. And if more money was the answer, well, then I would be all for that. But more money alone is not the answer to our educational problems and the issues we're facing. One of the concerns I hear as I go around is people are not understanding why we have these endless lawsuits, why we can't get school finance right. And I think we're focusing on the wrong thing. We need to be focusing on student outcomes. And until we focus on why only 30% statewide of our students are college and career ready, and why is it that that's the case, and it's not simply more money, it's how that money is used, I think we're going to continue spinning our wheels. And people are getting a little bit weary of constantly using taxpayer money to sue for more money. So I think those are some things we need to look at, and rightfully so. We need to have some new conversations, some innovative conversation about what it is we want in our schools in our state and how we're going to get them and what is the amount of money it takes to fund it.
Well, you have, as you mentioned, a kind of a unique perspective on the education discussion, which, as you mentioned as well, has been going on for a really, really long time. This session right now that's happening, they're looking at potentially $600 million to close to $1.5 billion in additional funding. They're not sure where to get it. Governor Brownback proposed it to be spread over 5 years. They said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. They're looking at possibly raising taxes again. They're looking at raising, as we just mentioned the last hour, cigarette sales taxes to be able to fund that. Don't smoke. Well, by the way, that's going to pay for the education funding in the state. And I don't know where else they can go. We're running out of money. If we don't touch an additional penny in additional spending this year, and we don't raise any taxes at all, we're going to go into next year in our 2-year budget cycle close to $500 million in a deficit again. And I don't want to see that. So the question is, from your perspective, where do we go? Where should the legislators go for this session right now, going into the 2019 session for the 2-year budget cycle?
Well, I think a couple of things need to happen. First of all, we need to look at a constitutional amendment. We're never going to satisfy, the sad truth is, Andy, we're never going to satisfy the educational bureaucracy and the lawyers who think the answer is just more and more and more money. So we've got to do something, first of all, to end those lawsuits. Secondly, we need to have separation of powers. It is not the Supreme Court's responsibility nor constitutional authority to appropriate funds nor tell the legislature how to do so. So we need to stand up to the Supreme Court, and part of that is saying, you do not get to tell us how to appropriate funds. That is our job. We are the elected officials to do so, and it's our constitutional responsibility. And then we need to take a good hard look at how Supreme Court justices are picked here in the state of Kansas. It's very secretive, and we need more transparency in that process so they're held accountable for their decisions as well. Mm-hmm. So I think if we do some of those things, hopefully we've got to put an end to the current dialogue and the lawsuits around education.
It's going to be a tough battle, really is, and with the legislature wanting to stand up to the Supreme Court, whether we allow it to fall in this year into a quote-unquote constitutional crisis to address it and create an amendment to kind of back off on the Supreme Court, or whether we actually try to abide by it, which I think might make it more difficult in the future. How do we make that fight happen? I know it's something that a lot of listeners have been asking, and we try to encourage our legislators to do it. Right now, though, in the current makeup, do you think that could be a possibility, or is it going to be put off for another year or two?
Well, I think with our current environment and the makeup of the legislature, I don't see it happening from a reality perspective this year. But that's why we have to elect people who are going to go fight and make it right. You know, just because it's a tough battle doesn't mean we shouldn't stand and fight for what's right. Mm-hmm. And the losers in this whole thing, what we tend to forget, are the students. And the focus becomes away from them and in this tangled bureaucracy and finance battle, which really, at the end of the day, we know what helps students achieve. And we need to get back to focusing on that instead of what we're focusing on now at the state level.
Sure, absolutely. That's a great conversation with the education. Let's get to some of the other platforms, though. This year, whether it happens this year or it does get pushed back, I don't know, but we've been talking about the potential for Medicaid expansion in the state. The proponents, and I've even heard many Republicans say we need to expand Medicaid. I've heard it from a couple of the governor's candidates saying we need to expand Medicaid. It's going to help the rural hospitals. We need to have that accessibility for low-income individuals, and that's their argument for wanting to expand the government program. The question I have for you, Renee, is as a candidate, as someone who wants to be in the House, where would you stand on this issue if that's still something when it comes up in 2019, if you're there?
Absolutely, and it's a fair question. And you know, Andy, if expanding Medicaid were truly going to help those folks, I would be all for it. However, when we look at the facts are we already have a waiting line for people on Medicaid. We have a demand that exceeds the supply of healthcare providers. Even for those folks who have Medicaid currently, they cannot find providers who will take them as a patient. So adding more people to that system isn't going to help them get the health care that they need. So from that perspective, it's not really truly going to help those folks. And the other thing is it's going to cost the state, conservative estimates, $1.2 billion. And there again, with all of our other budget issues, where are we going to find that additional funding? The traditional answer has been to raise taxes. So for those reasons, and when you look at helping the rural hospitals, the studies that I've seen, and from my understanding, is it's not enough money in Medicaid expansion to actually help keep those facilities open. So we've got to find other ways of providing care to those rural areas other than expanding Medicaid. It's expensive, it's inefficient, and we've got to find other ways to help those folks.
Well, I don't even understand why we're talking about a Medicaid expansion program when at the federal level we've repealed the mandate to force the government to have to pay for the expansion in states. So if we do it, it's almost a gamble and a risk to even say that we're going to get the subsidized money from the federal government to come in and pay for some of it anyways.
Well, and we've seen in states that have expanded Medicaid, their estimates are far below the number of people who then sign up, and it's far more expensive. Kentucky, it's just exponentially more expensive, and there's more people that sign up to get on Medicaid, and some that are even eligible for employer plans drop those plans to then go on Medicaid. And so I think we need to be selective about what we do. There's a need there, absolutely, but I do not think Medicaid expansion is the way to address that need.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Renee Erickson, candidate for House District number 87, coming up in the primaries this fall. One more topic before we kind of shift gears a little bit, but last week there was a big vote on gun rights, and one of them was repealing the carry on campus. When and even 17 out of the 53 votes that voted in support of it, 17 of them were Republicans, and wanting to first create more background checks and permits, be able to start repealing the constitutional carry and repeal carry on campus. If this is, which I'm sure is still going to be an issue come next session, what's your take on the entire Second Amendment argument? Where could we put you down as if you're in the seat?
Oh, that one's an easy one. I am staunchly pro-Second Amendment. I think the Constitution obviously tells us that we have a right to keep and bear arms, and we know that law-abiding citizens should not be prohibited from having that. The people who do not want to follow our law are going to make sure that they have a weapon, and I think the best detriment is to have law-abiding citizens have that right and not restrict those rights in any way. So I would not have voted for repealing the concealed carry on campus. And so I would support Second Amendment rights wholeheartedly.
There it is. Renee Erickson, candidate for District 87. How's the campaign going so far? I know you're out and gaining petitions and getting signatures. How's it going so far when you're doing the door-to-door?
I tell you, Andy, it is so encouraging. People share a lot of the same values and positions and concerns on the issues that I have, and it's just been so uplifting. I've had several people pray for me on their doorstep, which means more to me than anything. So it's just been a wonderful experience so far, and I just look forward to getting out and meeting more folks and looking forward to the campaign and getting it even more going up and going.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's going to be an election year and a half this year. I'm really excited to see what all comes out of this. Renee Erickson, candidate for District number 87. Good luck to you. I'm sure we'll get you back on the show definitely before the primaries again, talk more about your platform, how the campaign's going, and good luck to you out on the trail. We'll talk to you soon, Renee.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure there. Renee Erickson, again, candidate for House District number 87. Let's take a break. We'll open up lines to you when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, 27 minutes past the hour. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It is a Tuesday. Welcome aboard. Thanks again to Renee Erickson joining the program, talking about her run for the District 87 House seat in the state of Kansas on her views and her conservative values on what she wants to bring to the state legislature. Appreciate that. We'll get her back on the show, along with the current individual sitting in that seat, which is Roger Elliott in House District number 87. We'll get both of them on the show again before the primaries to talk about their platforms. Let's go to the phone, shall we? 316-721-8255. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, this is Helen.
Hey, good morning, Helen. How are you?
Just fine.
Good.
Listening to your, logic against, all illogic of raising taxes. That originally they said that they're going to raise the taxes on alcohol, cigarettes, and everything like that.
Sure.
To help pay for the medical expenses of people that
that suffer from it.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh, but what are they doing? They're taking that money from them, and then they're giving it to the progressive indoctrinating school education system.
Oh, it's absolutely. They're telling your kids with the DARE program, which I didn't realize was still in effect. I'm glad it is. But they're essentially saying, okay, DARE, go into the classroom, go to the elementary school, go to the middle school, teach them not to smoke and use a little. I mean, do you remember that with the ketchup squirt bottle, and they cut the little hole and they put the cigarette in it, put the cotton balls in there, and then they breathe it to where it burns up the cigarette. And then you can see the tobacco on the cotton balls.
Three of our kids went through the DARE classes.
Yeah.
And
exactly. They did all of that, and they got to learn about it, and they got to see how bad it is for you, and so on and so forth. And they taught them, and at the same time, they're going to say, okay, the reason that you're able to do that, and we're funding this, and that you're going to get new school books and everything, is because of the fact that there's a bunch of people that are smoking, and we raise the sales tax on those other individuals. And that's what we're essentially saying right now. Don't smoke, but this is why you're going to get really nice things in your school.
And this is what God says about, hello?
Yeah. Oh, well, I tell you what, Helen, hang on the line here. We got to take a bottom of the hour break. But, I mean, the hypocrisy's right there. Hello. It's really easy to see that, if you're going to do it for your own personal gain like the government wants to do, then it's not about actually taking care of you or making you stop doing a project, but it's actually just about, trying to find more revenue for the government so they can fund more goodies. Bottom of the hour news coming up. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The fastest growing radio show in Kansas.
What? How's he do that?
That's what I'm talking about.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
That's the way we're rolling. Welcome into The Voice of Reason. Wrapping up the show today. It's an honor, absolute honor to have you along, no matter where you're maybe watching, listening, checking it out. We appreciate that very much. So even on the Facebook Live, saw a lot of people sharing it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, as we try and share the social media. Broadcasting here on the KQAM Airways 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, along with KGPT TV, channel 2610. You can also, by the way, get the rerun of the show this evening from 6 to 9 at night on KGPT TV as well. We're everywhere. You can't escape us. Trying to get the information out to you. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK as we roll along here talking about some of the state issues. How do we get our elected officials to understand there is ridiculous taxes on stupid things that make it very hypocritical on what they're spending it on, and how do we get them to actually get within their budget means? That's the question I have for you today, and I want to get your thoughts on it. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is still Helen.
Oh, hey, Helen. How's it going?
Just fine.
Good.
Well, I wanted to continue with that,
Yes.
Where God says in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 19 through 20, that the wisdom of this world is foolishness or stupidity with God. For it is written in the Old Testament, the whole Bible, where He, the Lord, and ensnares and entraps the wise, the worldly ones, in their own craftiness.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a great point.
And again, 20. Again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, the worldly wise, that they're vain, empty, worthless. So,
welcome to politicians.
We're letting the worldly wise lead us and guide us.
No doubt. Helen, I appreciate that very much. It's a great point. I mean, the politicians, they're a little useless sometimes, aren't they? 316-721-8255. Here's another story that brings it kind of full circle, kind of gives you that prime example of this. Kansas chemistry teacher fights immigration arrest. Now, if you remember, we have the potential government shutting down on Thursday at the federal level. We are debating on what to do with immigration policy across the state and across the nation, really. We are trying to set our budgets. We're trying to figure out exactly what to do with individuals who have broken the law. And then we see a story like this. Supporters of the Kansas chemistry instructor hope immigration officials will be lenient because he has lived in the United States for 30 years without problems and has a family. That's a Hat Tip to Cake TV with their website. The Kansas City Star reporting, Syed Ahmed Jamal was arrested in his front yard in Lawrence, Kansas on January 24th as he walked his 7th grade daughter to school. The 55-year-old Jamal, who is from Bangladesh originally, arrived in the United States back in 1987 to study at the University of Kansas. Most recently, he was teaching at Park University. Jamal's lawyer says the immigration judge allowed Jamal to remain in the country on a supervised basis, provided he check in regularly. So that's the news story that's popped up, and it's all over Drudge Report. It's all over the local media. It's the big story of a chemistry teacher who's been here since 1987, came here as a child, received a student visa in order to stay in the country. Here's the kicker. does not have his naturalization, has been here for 30 plus years, and now has his family, and they don't want to kick him out. He's part of the community. He's now a teacher. He's got his family. He's been here for 30 plus years. Oh my gosh, why can't we just let him stay here? He hasn't had a problem. There's no issue whatsoever. He doesn't know Bangladesh. He's a kid. He was a kid when he came here. And he even went as far as getting a student visa. And I applaud him for that. He got a student visa. Here's the kicker that they're not reporting in the story that goes a little bit deeper. He has 5 siblings that all came here at the exact same time. All 5 of them have received naturalization. They have become U.S. citizens. He has not. And he's bounced around back and forth from getting a student visa to a temporary work visa. He was on a temporary visa recently, and now he's potentially going to be deported because he did not get his naturalization. He's been here for 30 years. And now he's playing the victim because his family's here. He has his wife. He has his kids. He can't leave. Why didn't he get his naturalization? Why didn't he get it? All 5 of his brothers and sisters did. Why didn't he? Jamal, 55 years old, could say goodbye to his wife and 3 children. The ICE agents detained him and led him away in handcuffs. The arrest of a beloved Lawrence family man, scientist and community leader, came as a shock to Jamal's friends and neighbors in the Kansas City area, where he lived once arriving in the United States on a student visa from Bangladesh more than 30 years ago. He would go on to also attain a degree in molecular biosciences and pharmaceutical engineering, then settling in Lawrence to raise his family. Along the way, he switched from a student visa to an H-1B visa for highly skilled workers, and then back to a student visa when he enrolled in his doctoral program. According to the family at the time, this is, by the way, hat tip to the Independent UK. At the time of his arrest, Jamal was on a temporary work visa teaching chemistry at an adjacent professor at Park University in Kansas City. 5 siblings, however, have all received their naturalization. Why is he not? If he's got his doctoral, if he's making a lot of money becoming a teacher, if he's got all these different degrees, why hasn't he? I mean, he's got the time. He's had over 30 years. Maybe he hasn't done money because he hasn't made very smart financial decisions. I don't know his personal life. I don't know. The fact is, he's on a temporary work visa. He's bounced back and forth between work visas and student visas for 30 years. That's not how you use the system. And we need to remember that. That's not how you use it. If you're going to have a student visa, you're going to be here for, let's say, 4 to 8 years to get your schooling done. And then you either become a naturalized citizen, or you transfer to become a work visa, or you go back to where you came from. End of story. If you're here for a work visas are only temporary. You're here to do a job, do a work, and then you go back. And you can't bounce back. This is called abusing the system, which means he's abused the system. Which means, should we give him leniency because he's been here for 30 years and now all of a sudden has a family? He should have known this. His 5 other family members, his 5 other brothers and sisters and siblings all got their naturalization. Why didn't he? Mainstream media is not going to report that, though, because they don't want you to know that. All they want you to know is that he's a family man. He's a part of the community. He's a science teacher. Why shouldn't we feel pity upon him? 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Ron.
Ron, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. My heart just really bleeds for him.
It bleeds for him in the sense that he should have followed the law and done it right, so that way he wouldn't have to be in this situation. If he really cared about his family, in my opinion, he would have rectified the situation so that way he wouldn't have the threat of being torn away from them.
Yeah, on another note, Mrs. Erickson is spot on. And the big thing we need to really look at is going to the administrative realignment, okay? And that's worth $300 to $500 million.
Sure.
And there's where we need it. And I wish you wouldn't use the word consolidation, because it conjures up bad tones within the Democrats.
Yeah, their red flags go up. They don't like that very much.
Yeah, but they need to look at that as one of the ways to we need to straighten out all the spending. There's just way too much spending that goes on. 52 cents out of every dollar. That's outrageous.
Give me a break. Yeah, and here's the thing. We need to focus on, again, and we mentioned this before, but we need to focus on the local school districts, because they're the ones that receive the allotted money from the state, and they say, all right, here's your chunk of the change, now do what you will with it. And it's the local school board that decides if it's going to go towards administrative salaries, if it's going to go towards teacher salaries, if it's going to go towards the reconstruction of buildings and repairing of buildings and the maintenance, if it's going to go towards the books, if it's going to go towards whatever. The local school district does that. So what we really need to do is focus on the local school districts in the area. They need to start screening and start monitoring what they spend and where they spend it and trying to save a little bit of money. And then when they start saying, you know what, we don't need as much, keep it, then we can start allotting the money elsewhere from the state level.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing of it is you got to clean out these school boards, because that's where all these people now, they've just got elected up there in the state house.
Sure.
A bunch of them like Lynn Rogers, you know.
Absolutely.
And, all they went up there for is they want more money for the schools.
That's their one agenda. That's what many of them that were part of the administration in the schools, you're right, got elected as elected officials with that one sole agenda. It's really the special interest that got their way as an elected seat and being able to abuse that in any way, shape, or form. Ron, I appreciate it very much. Great points. Let's go back to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, Andy, this is Heath.
Hey, what's going on, Heath? How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. Had a conversation with two legislators this weekend, and they're conservative. I would say probably 75 to 80% conservative on a scale.
Okay.
Is the way I would rate them. And it was we were talking about taxes and state taxes, and it was rather depressing because all of the federal on the federal side, you know, all the tax benefits that might come from the new tax plan in the next year will be ate up by the decisions that are made in Topeka. For individual tax income,
sure,
you know, income tax and stuff. And the thing is they were talking about what some of the ideas they were trying to toss around in Topeka as far as the plans they were coming up to, for taxes to come up with extra money or to, cut taxes and stuff like that, because they're just tossing ideas around. And the thing that was depressing is that these two conservative legislators were trying to come up with ideas to, cut taxes in one side of the budget, but then, they were struggling because they kept asking the question to each other, well, how are you going to come up with the extra money to, supply the budget? And the thing I realized is that even the conservatives that are in Topeka are brainwashed to the effect that the state budget is set in stone or so unnecessary that they can't even cut their own budget to save taxes for the taxpayer.
That's interesting. Now, do you think that they're brainwashed in that sense where they don't see it, or do you just think that it's a lost cause to try and argue that position, so they're trying to find that happy medium between the two?
No, I think they've lost sight of the conservative mindset that sometimes the state budget can be cut so that the taxpayer benefits versus the necessity of the state apparatus.
Well,
you know what I mean? And so I don't think they've been brainwashed or something, but I think they've been,
they've been there too long trying to play. Yeah.
Yeah, they've been so infiltrated that the necessity of the state budget is so necessary. But then they kept coming back to, well, where do you cut KDOT, or do you cut, ag or fish and game, or all these agencies? There's 93 agencies within the state that take money out of the budget. And so they were saying, well, it always comes back to education and human service, because education is 62 to 65% of the budget, and then human services is like another 30 some odd percent. I mean, I think it was like in the 80 to 90% range of two agencies, or two, basically industries is what I call them.
Yeah, right around 93, 95%. The rest of the agencies, as you mentioned, all 90, 100 and some odd different agencies, all of them bicker over close to 5 or 6% of the budget, while really the two main categories of education and the human services get the rest of it.
Yeah, and so it's sickening to see our legislators, and particularly Brownback years ago, bend over backwards to the court, because basically the K-12 education system is becoming a black hole. I mean, if you know anything about how black holes work, they swallow everything. And it's becoming a black hole for the state budget. And so, I don't know. I mean, people need to listen to your show, need to call their legislator and hammer them that this budget needs to settle down, So that's all I got for the news today.
Well, that's a great point, Heath. I appreciate it very much. So, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, we need to make sure that they know that's an option, that they have that opportunity, that they are able to say, you know what, we're going to cut, we're going to make things more efficient, we're going to audit, we're going to cut, and that way we can start saving money so we don't have to raise taxes, and then we can start looking towards, once we start growing, that we can start decreasing taxes again. Got a couple minutes left, but I want to take one more phone call. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Jim, what's going on, sir?
Oh, well, I agree with your interview. You know, that the government's got a problem, and I'm going to point out where the problem is in some respects. On your own network news, they're reporting that the stock market is down, and then they say it's because wages are going up and people are afraid of inflation. People are afraid of the inflation and the problem caused by the government being unable to actually set a budget, and that's what causes inflation.
Well,
It's
that's what
not
they're
wages.
concerned about. You're exactly right. I mean, right now there's no consistency at the federal level or at the state level. The federal level, they don't know whether we're going to cut the budget, whether they're going to do a reform, whether we're going to raise more spending, whether we're going to borrow more money, whether we're going to print off more money. We don't know what's happening. At the state level here, we don't know whether we're going to see more tax increases, a major spending increase, or whether we're actually going to try and stay stagnant. We don't know. And inconsistency makes people scared, and they're going to cling on to their money rather than invest it and spend it.
And people are still trying to blame Brownback's tax cuts. You know, people should look at Brownback's tax cuts and say, how many jobs and businesses did Brownback's tax cut save?
Exactly.
And how many are we giving away because of the tax increases?
That's a great point. Jim, I love it very much. So it's an absolutely great point. I want to do this. We're running short on time, but I have not forgotten. I'm going to clear the lines right here. If you're on hold, I apologize. We'll call back in a second here, but I do want to do this. It is the last one that I have. The last pair of tickets, and they've been a hot commodity. I looked at the average price for these tickets for the show, $80-$90, especially if you're on the floor. It's close to $100 for the tickets here. It is the biggest show that I've seen in a while. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to be there tonight. It's at Intrust Bank Arena. It's Avenged Sevenfold along with Breaking Benjamin. It's going to be a heck of a show tonight, 7 o'clock, 6:30, I believe doors open. And I had the last pair of tickets to give away right now. And since we've had so many, we're going to do caller number 6. Caller number 6, so if you get hung up on, try and call back. We'll do caller number 6 at 721-8255, 721-TALK. Right here, Avenged Sevenfold. This is the Voice of Reason.
In the distance, try and see it all. Chances are that you might find that we share a common discomfort now. I feel I'm walking a fine line. Tell me only if it's real.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back in, wrapping up the show today. They're it. Congratulations, Camille, for winning the tickets. Got them. They're all said, all done for the Avenged Sevenfold concert. I'm going to be there tonight. It'll be a great time. Tomorrow's going to be fun. As, you know, it's concerts, they relatively stay a little bit later and have a little bit more. My bedtime's 7:30 every night, so having a show start at 7 is going to be really, really fun to see how the show's going to go tomorrow morning. Let's take one more phone call, wrapping up the show today, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. This is Paul.
Paul, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you.
Good.
How are you?
Hey, we're living the dream. We got about 1 minute. Yeah, go for it.
About that teacher in Lawrence?
Yes.
I think maybe the point some people are missing is who signed his paycheck all these years. Likely the state of Kansas.
That's a good point.
And what are they going to... It's maybe a money grab. They want to... All the FICA Medicare he's paid in all these 30 years, they want to grab that from him.
Well, I don't know if they want to grab the benefits. I mean, I don't know how much the benefits are, but it's a good point on who was signing the paycheck when he had expired visas, when he was on temporary visas. I mean, you can get a job when you're on visas, but...
The person that's signing his paycheck should have known that, shouldn't they?
That's you're absolutely right.
So I think
they probably
it's
should
an
have.
illegal employer problem, not an illegal alien problem.
Well, that's a good point. Paul, I appreciate that very much. We're out of time here, but that's really good points. if we're going to do the proper procedure to actually screen people to get a job, you would think that, we'd make sure. Now, if they got hired on as a visa and the visa expired, then I don't know how much they can do. But either way, we have both sides to look at here. You're absolutely right. This is The Voice of Reason. Have a great day, everybody.